everyone. Happy Sunday. Well, Sunday if you're here in the Western Hemisphere where I am. Our Australian friends, of course, it's already Monday. Hello, future people. Um, Slight change of plans, I suppose. Nick isn't here. I don't know where Nick is. I haven't heard from him. Hopefully all is well, but for the time being, we're gonna improvise and hopefully he'll show up soon. Say la vie. So, I've got a few, as you all know, I have a backlog of videos that I have never gotten a chance to get to, and we can play with some of those tonight if it interests the jury, I suppose. I, I usually I improvise. I like to think I'm good at it, but we're like next level improvising. I'm literally making it up as we go along. While the intro was playing, I was pulling up videos from my back catalog of stuff we can go over. So, as is my usual habit, we're gonna do a poll. I have four options for y'all, and I'm gonna put them into the side chat. So those of you watching on YouTube can vote. Anybody not on YouTube, Twitch or Facebook people, just drop a comment and I will consider that a vote in this poll here. So let me do the typey type and see which video we want to start with. Let's see, which first? The chicken, the egg, the other. We have a flat Earth video. That was the first thing that popped to my attention, possibly because we were just talking about flat Earth last night. We have Glinner doing an interview. Glinner, of course, being the transphobe who lost his entire family because he's got the brainworms. We've got one minister calling another pastor evil, which I thought could be fun. I'm not sure exactly what that's about, but it sounds interesting. And another person apparently talking about a Ricky Gervais and proof of God. So we'll call that one Ricky and God. All right, and we will start the poll. Okay, so while that's cooking, hello to everyone in the live chat. It's good to see you. It's wonderful to do a show with live people so we can interact, we can talk, we can communicate, we can engage, and hopefully make each other laugh a little bit at the silly things that people believe in for no apparent reason. It is wonderful to see everybody. If you're joining us in the future, if you're watching later, do subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss future live streams. It would be wonderful to see you in the chat as well. So first of all, I see Thessalente. I can never pronounce this. Usually my Sunday shows go from 8 p.m. Eastern to 9:30 Eastern, give or take. Sometimes I start early when I know it's going to be a long thing, but I have generally I have a hard cutoff at 9:30 because this show leads into Bad Science Sunday over on Maya Atkinson's channel. Tonight's guest for Bad Science is Two Guys Talking History. I believe the topic is Hollow Earth, which should be really, really fascinating. You don't want to miss it, and if you're watching on YouTube, you don't have to because the stream will take you over there when this show concludes. Maya, of course, is in the chat. No doubt getting ready for her own show, as is her usual habit. Star Song, hello, hello, good to see ya. Pragmatic Crystal, dropping the links. Yes, if Nick's show is In Time News, should he show up? I'm going to ask him about it because In Time is one of my favorite things. It's an independent news show, and the production is just off the hook. It's got the best intros and it's got the best overlays, I suppose. And it just, even when the world has gone absolutely crazy, it gives me a sense of peace to hear Nick making sense of it for us. I don't know. I just really like it, which is why I asked Nick to be on. And hopefully things are good with him, but whatever the case may be, In Time is absolutely worth your time. Let's see. I see Barnaby. Hello, hello. Good to see ya. Purple rhymes with orange. Purple gave me this necklace, which I absolutely adore. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a purple butterfly, and it's delightful. Let's see. Who else have we got? Robin Webster. the delightful supporter of the community, Robin Webster, of course, has sent me things, including this here Bible that I was just using, recording another video for later. Um, it's good to have a Bible when you do counter apologetics. Very, very handy, and I appreciate that very much. Of course, that's not the only thing Robin does for the community, but it's a thing that I tangibly have to hand to point at. Ryan Donovan, good to see ya. Hello, hello. Purple says, Ember, love the dress. Would like to know where I could get the material on your right side. My right side. Well, I assume they both come from the same place. I think it's the same material because I'm pretty sure it's actually screen printed. Like there aren't individual. Oh my goodness, I'm getting all caught up on things. It's fine. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just like I should read the tag, but I'm not going to take it off to read the tag right now. It's mostly cotton from the feel of it, and it's just screen printed. But yeah, it's just it actually goes across. The pattern reverses. So on this side, the various colors go down the dress, and then on the other side, hey, it's a Nick. Hello, hello.
Oh, terribly sorry about that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, well, I can hear you. How
Hey.
does he sound to you guys, chat?
If they can hear me, then it's not Nick Souter. I don't think I've ever successfully gone into a stream with the audio working.
It's fair. Audio problems are a lefty tube problem.
Yeah. Sorry I'm late. I apologize.
It's all right. It happens. Real quick, like Barnaby Wild sends a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, and says you are talented enough to be solo. I appreciate it. I often end up do my Sunday shows on my own. But I am glad that you were able to join us. Let me change the scenery. Okay, I already did. I am ahead of myself. Good job. Okay. We're winging it today. Such is the nature of things. So, for anybody who doesn't know, I mentioned In Time earlier. Nick is the host of In Time, also an author, a debater, a infamous leftist, atheist, and more things. If you have a question for Nick, try to tag me, and I'll try to save it so we can do a little Q&A at the end of the show. But yeah, how are you today, Nick?
I am doing well, thank you. I'm doing very well. It's been a good day, busy, so it's just and like things got away from me. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, it's all right. Kind of same. I was just like pre-recording some I'm trying to actually produce some content for a change. It's been a little while, and I was doing like a half-hour response, and 2 hours later, I'm like, I should probably wrap this up.
That's all. Anybody who's seen any of my streams, like, okay, so I'm gonna deviate for just 1 minute, and then like 20 minutes later, like I'm getting like 20 Discord dings. So like, you realize I have a clock on you, and it's been a lot more than 1 minute. I'm like, well, 1 minute, it's. Have you ever read Einstein? I mean, 1 minute's relative. I mean,
It's
based on
true.
where you are in the universe, I may still actually be under a minute, but that excuse never works. It really kind of sucks.
Yeah, I don't know why people are so absolutist about time.
I don't think it's that they're absolutist. I just think that if I'm going to be over by 2000%, that's when they start to object. I mean, there's room for error, but 20 or 30 minutes is pushing it for a 1 minute spiel.
I think maybe it's like a colloquial thing, like the way teenagers especially will say, yeah, 1 second, when they actually mean
Exactly. I lived in California for a little bit, and oh dear Lord. First of all, when I moved there, they said, "Oh, you're from New England. Everyone from New England's an asshole," and I got really kind of offended by that. They're like, "No offense." I was like, "Yeah, well, I don't." Anytime somebody says "no offense," you're about to be offended. And
Mhm.
I finally realized, and somebody had done some research on this, and they found that if you're at a stoplight in California, you have about 7 seconds from when it turns green to when somebody's going to honk at you. In
That's more generous than
Massachusetts,
I'd expect.
you have about 0.7 seconds before somebody's gonna honk. Yeah, and I'm just like, when I go out the door, I was like, please don't see my neighbors. Please don't see my neighbors, because if I bump into my neighbors, they expect a 5 or 10 minute chat. And like, if you have a meeting planned for 5, you show up at 10 of 5, because the meeting starts at 5. If you show up at 5, you're already late. So I show up at 10 of 5, and then at like 5:15, people start rolling in. They're like, what are you doing here? Waiting on a meeting that I was told was going to be in California. It's a different. I was like, okay, you know what? We are assholes. I get that now. I own it. If you're gonna, I blame the weather. I completely blame the weather.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, it is, because actually 6 months out of the year in New England, you don't want to be outside. And the rest of the time it's going to be raining or something like that. But I mean, if it's snowing, if it's raining, so, you pump gasoline faster. And if somebody starts talking to you while you're pumping gasoline, you're like, get the fuck away from me. I want to get back in my car. So
I know it.
there's pressure
I live near
to move.
Syracuse, which
Yeah.
it's the same latitude plus the lake effect from the Great Lakes. It's
Yep.
it's an adventure.
Yep. So that's it. So, anyways, I had set my watch to California time, so I'm actually early. In fact, actually, I don't even need to start. Well, I'll come back in a few minutes and we can start the show.
Yeah, grab some coffee, all kinds of things. I mean, I can run the other intro. Let's see, where the hell is it? I ended up using my standard intro for when I'm doing a live by myself is 2 minutes and 25 seconds. And that gives me a minute to like adjust things and make sure I have water and all that stuff. The intro for this show is 1:06, and that's because I just re-engineered it, because it had been just 6 seconds for the longest time, and that was too short. It's barely enough time to hit the thing and then hit the go live button.
Yeah, that is a little short. That is a little short from the back
Yeah.
end. Nick has an inability to ever be on time. That, unfortunately, regrettably, is true. It's if there's ever a doppelganger, the way they're going to know is because A, I start with the volume on, and B, I'm actually on time. Either of those two is pretty much like, okay, he's been replaced by a Russian doppelganger.
Those pesky Russians will stop at nothing.
I know. It wasn't even the Russians that hacked Trump. It was the Iranians. I was like, oh my God. The Russians don't want to hack Trump. The Iranians, I was a little surprised at.
Well, I mean, there was that whole thing during 2016.
There was, and they're still
Yeah.
pissed about that. And they have every right to be. People don't often understand the what actually happened there, which we're the ones who broke the agreement, not them. We sort of, quote, did it by the we were required to inspect and determine whether or not they were following the rules of the accord we had with them, and if they weren't, we'd declare that they weren't, and they were. And Trump was just like, no, I'm going to certify they aren't. So he decertified, despite the fact that and he declared that they weren't following the rules, even though they were. Everybody agreed they were. The inspectors said, yeah, they're following the rules. And it's like, no, we're out of the deal because they broke the rules. And it's just like, we just violated a treaty. There's a good plan.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
So,
that's the beauty of fascism. You can just declare what reality is.
Yeah,
like drawing on weather
exactly.
maps.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, that will never get old.
Nope.
That will never get old. Well, and now that's actually, that's why he wanted the Chevron deference thing overturned, is so that literally, like when NOAA says there's a hurricane coming, they're not allowed to say that anymore. They can't. They're federal. So literally, Trump can tell them where the hurricane is going to be because Chevron deference has been overturned. So,
Awesome.
I think, yeah, I know there's going to be a lot more interesting maps coming out of Trump's ass. I mean, sorry.
Yeah,
is this
that too.
No.
Yeah. It's okay. It's just us and a few friends.
Oh, thank God. I thought we were live. Oh, wow. I would not want people to have heard that.
For sure. Yeah, we've been seeing a lot. To tangent briefly, the Texas Board of Education, I think, has been pushing back on the new Title IX changes, saying that because of Chevron, the Federal Board of Education doesn't have the authority to enforce education regulations.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, and I'm sorry. Which state did you say that was Ohio?
I believe it was Texas, but
Oh,
I
Texas.
only
Okay,
glanced
well,
at
I
it
believe
briefly in
Texas.
my news feed.
Just pick a state. Take the Mason-Dixon line. Pick basically every state south of that. Throw a dart. That's probably the one you were talking about. Alabama, Texas, Florida. No, and then Ohio. The Ohio one saying now that children you need parents' consent for all medical procedures on children. I think it's below the 18 at the age of 18, which comes up with a whole host of problems that I'm not going to get into here. I think actually probably because you can get demonetized for me just suggesting some of the problems. But if there's abuse between, say, a parent and a child, the child can't get treatment for that abuse without the abuser's consent. And if that would involve the collection of evidence that could put the abuser in jail, they still can't proceed without the abuser's consent. Oh, dear Lord.
Fantastic. I love
Yeah.
how well thought through these reactionary policies often are.
Yeah. And listen, I'm keenly aware. You have to be aware of two things. First of all, that is obviously not the majority circumstance, but it's also not a trivial number of occasions that stuff like that happens. It is non-trivial. You cannot just pretend it doesn't happen or pretend that it's inconsequential to the people who need that the most, and those are the ones that they just disenfranchised. Um, I don't. Yeah. At least, how are you feeling about Kamala?
Pretty. I've mixed feels. I really do. I'm
Yep.
excited. I'm
Hmm.
hopeful, and that's a wonderful feeling to have after all this bullshit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a part of me that is just screaming, "She's a cop. She's a cop. She's a cop." But also, I've looked at her record, and she seems to be one of those DAs who at least seems to believe that she's using the law as a way to protect victims rather than oppress everyone. It's still not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. Also, the Palestine situation. Like she's moved a bit over on it, partially and thanks to the protesters by saying, we need to use our force to put a stop to this. But that said, those two issues notwithstanding, everything else I know about her, it's just all green lights, and it's exciting.
It yeah. Um, I went from thoroughly convinced that Trump was going to win to ballparking at a probably 20% or lower that he's going to win. Um, Having said that, I know we're all atheists. I know I don't give a shit. I'm knocking on wood right now. This very moment, I'm just knocking on. I will do whatever it takes. If I have to, if I have to praise Jesus, I will praise Jesus for Trump not to win. I don't care. I will do whatever it takes. Um,
Oh yeah, she could
so
be a lot more flawed. Like, I mean, she's partially. I've got rose tinted goggles because of the past recent couple presidents. But I mean, she could be a lot worse and still be the best thing since sliced bread. We're
oh
we're
yeah,
we're
yeah.
pretty lucky.
Well, and she's been very wooden in the past, and she's not, Mrs. Charming right now anyway, but she's gotten a lot better. And sh the other thing is you have to realize okay, so I was never a fan of Hillary Clinton. I actually worked on the Obama campaign, so I became less of a fan of Hillary Clinton when I really
Fair
got to see
enough.
how her campaign operated because her campaign and ours butted heads a lot, and I was the district coordinator for the 3rd congressional district in Connecticut. And when we met with the Hillary campaign, it was not fun. It was not fun. Basically, the attitude walking into the meeting is, "Oh, here come those guys who think that they maybe have a shot at winning the presidency," and where they're like, "You know, we're ahead, right?" they're like, we don't care about numbers. It's like, okay. They're like, so why are you guys in our way? If you want, you can have vice president. With like, we're ahead. But there's a couple of things you have to give her. I don't care how much you hate her, and frankly, I've had Republicans and conservatives I've had good conversations with, but if they can't admit the following things, they're not interested in an honest conversation. One, she is the most vetted candidate in human history.
That's
No
true.
candidate has undergone more scrutiny, and nobody's found anything. Now, people say butter emails, butter emails, butter emails. Yeah, except, first of all, if you actually read what was written, it's not what Fox News printed, which is really surprising. I mean, it's almost like Fox News lied. Almost. I don't want to go that far yet.
That never happens.
Because I mean, it's, but anyways, I'm like, if you read what happened, I was like, you understand there's a lot of nuance there. And if an entire, the Republicans controlled Congress and they couldn't get an independent counsel that they formed to indict her. So, I don't like her. I'm sure she's done some pretty shady shit, but after investigation after investigation after investigation, she's come up clean. She was an excellent Secretary of State. She was not a doormat during Bill Clinton's 2 years in prison. So she's qualified. She's one of the most qualified people who could run and one of the most highly vetted candidates. Well, why the hell did I bring up Hillary Clinton? So, Kamala is still more, I think, accessible than Hillary Clinton. I think that's really good because Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, and she probably really won by most metrics, I think. So now we got someone who's, oh, dear Lord. Thank you, Titan. I am profoundly flattered.
It's the eyes, I think.
It's the $20, but I sent him in the mail, but that's all right. Speaking of things that I won't say once we're on air. So yeah, I think that Kamala has more charisma. Oh yeah, this was the biggie. Hillary Clinton is no fucking slouch, and yet I got the impression that I didn't get the impression. Trump rattled her. At their debate, that creepy shit that he was doing, following her around, trying to intimidate her. I don't think he intimidated her, but he got under her skin. And Kamala would turn around and just say, back the fuck up. And Hillary didn't do that. And probably, you can second guess from here to the whatever, but the fact is, Kamala was a prosecutor. She put away some really dangerous people who probably wanted her dead, people who certainly threatened her to her face. She has seen worse than Trump.
Very much, yes.
Yeah. So, I think when she engages Trump, I think she sees Trump as a joke. Hillary didn't see Trump as a joke. I think Kamala sees Trump as a joke, and I think that's a very, very good thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And on the subject of her background as a DA, as many people in the chat have pointed out, she's had more experience since then as a senator, as VP. She's learned a lot. She's progressed in some of her views, which is fantastic. But as a prosecutor, I covered on the transpositions last week. She was the one behind the laws banning the trans panic defense, the gay panic defense, which, if anybody doesn't know, when a person encounters a person and discovers they're trans or discovers they're gay, in 30 states, it's legal to kill them. You can just kill them for being trans or being gay. You get arrested, you plead to the judge. Well, I found out they were trans, so I killed them. And it's fine.
I think there was a federal decision after the defense successfully worked in Texas. There was a number of states that did go to legitimize that defense, and then there was a federal ruling that said that defense actually could not be used. So I believe that I could be wrong. You probably know a lot more. I will research it and keep my mouth shut, I think, before. But it certainly has been more than once made completely legal to kill trans people in multiple states in the union. Yeah,
It's it's
and
it's
yeah.
troubling, and I am being slightly hyperbolic. When people use the defense, they don't automatically get off the hook all of the time. Usually, it's just a slightly reduced sentence. Like instead of first-degree murder, they get second-degree manslaughter, something along those lines. But
Well,
it is
the
still a
first one in
problem,
Texas got completely off. I mean, he
mm,
just it was just like I thought I thought I was kissing a lady, and and then I found out that she had a penis, and I just freaked out and shot and killed him, and the jury's like, "You poor thing," and they let him go, and it's just like, um, I've written a lot of books, as you said, and the words escape me to even begin to wrap my head around. Um, and I'm not trans. I'm like, I can't even begin to fathom. It must be fucking terrifying. It's just like, I mean,
a
the
little
jury
bit,
sympathized with the guy. They sympathized with the guy, not the person he shot.
right?
Oh,
And that's in Texas where they like have the express lane to the electric chair. But the reason I bring it up is
mhm.
Kamala saw a case like that happen where a group of men murdered a child and used the trans panic defense. And two of them got reduced charges, and the rest of the group got off with like misdemeanors and whatnot. And it was outside her jurisdiction. She couldn't do anything about it as a DA, but she took action. She started collecting prosecutors and investigators and community advocates and every group she could think of, and started working on ways to create policy that would ensure people's civil rights are represented, whether they're gay or trans or anything else, in courts. And then when she became state attorney general, she worked with the legislature to push through the first ban of the panic defense, and California became the first state to do so. Um, just last week, the week before, one of those things, Michigan became the 20th state to ban it, and their bill was a cut and paste of Kamala's bill. So they're still using the same format to do that, and it's great to see. And it's because of Kamala that that's happening. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think she's uh, I'm 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 optimistic.
Yeah,
Is what I'm gonna say. Yeah, she's and the areas where she's rough around the edges, she has she's you know what the thing is? I think basically she's known she's going to be making a presidential run for a while. I mean, she just assumed it would be in another 4 years. I think
doubtless.
the actual plan probably was to have um Biden resign uh 2 years and a day into his second term. The reason is this then gives Kamala 2 years as an incumbent president. Now, when she runs, she's actually running for her first term. She still can
Hmm.
have an additional 2 terms, but she is now gonna be running as an incumbent who isn't going into lame duck status. That is more powerful than just about any, and the lame duck status is very, when you're president on your first day, your power continues to grow, and it grows pretty rapidly till you get to about the middle of your first term. Then it still grows, assuming you're doing a decent job. It still grows, but it peters out, and then everyone waits to see what happens on your second term. The day you hit your second term, first day of your second term, is the strongest you will ever have left because you're not going to be in power again in 4 years. So your ability to trade, to negotiate just drops day by day by day on your second term. If Kamala gets less than half a term for her first term actually starts on the second one. So I was hoping that they would do that. That would be a poor idea. I think at this point, let Biden finish out she's almost running as the incumbent anyway, since she's the VP. Let Biden finish his term and give him the dignity of that. But that's what I thought was going to happen.
It's a bold plan, and It's a thing. It's come up recently, how long exactly a VP can fill in for a president and still be able to run for 2 full terms. Um, yeah, it would give
My
her the
understanding is
ability to
it
be
is
like the longest sitting president since the term limits came into effect.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Um, so, yeah. Now, I think replacing Biden was obviously the thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was bad. I think everybody knew he was bad. I believed wholeheartedly the reports that said he was falling asleep while talking to Benjamin Netanyahu, and that was like 3 years ago or something. So, um, yeah, I was it had to be done, and I'm glad he did it.
Yeah, it's definitely a big step up. A lot of people were like, they're like, well, who's going to replace him? I'm like, Kamala. That's what the VPs do. And they're like, nah, she can't win. And then here we are with like Obama-sized crowds and people energized and fundraising records and all sorts of interesting
Oh,
things.
it was interesting watching what people were floating. They're like, "Is Oprah available?" Oh, Oprah. She's like, "Well, Reagan was an actor. Why not Oprah?" She's got the name recognition. It's like, "Oh shit,
Oh
no,
yeah, she could
no."
appoint Dr. Phil as Surgeon General.
Oh
What
my
could possibly
god,
go wrong?
that would be almost as bad as who was Trump planning on appointing? There have been some talk of Trump appointments already who he was planning on appointing to various positions, and it was, oh yeah, who he was going to appoint to the head of the FDA was some vax denying. I forget who it was. Ooh, Robert F. Kennedy.
Oh, good.
He's it's Trump. They in one of the leaks, I think they discovered that Trump was negotiating with Robert F. Kennedy that if he stays in the race, believe it or not, the negotiation is if he stays in the race till the end, if Trump wins, he will make him the head of the FDA. Robert F. Kennedy, the head of, oh dear Lord, and they want him to stay in the race because he's pulling 7% off of Kamala.
Hmm.
That doesn't sound like a lot. It's a bull. It's everything. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we saw
yeah.
the difference that third party candidates made in previous races. Some of them are kind of significant. If only we had a better system, but we need like politicians who have both the power and the will to do something about that. And hopefully we'll get there. Um, but
I,
enough on politics. I
okay.
wanted to talk about you. Um, you've
My
mentioned
favorite topic.
right. You've mentioned in this very stream that you are an atheist. Um,
Yes.
did you start out as an atheist? Like,
No.
were you raised in a faith and then left, or like, what's your
Oh,
origin story?
okay. We'll have to figure out how long I'm going to make this one. This will just be a minute. So, um, raised loosely Protestant, and I think sort of what people would now often call Christian deists. So I believe that there probably was a Jesus. I didn't really believe in the Bible mumbo jumbo, but I thought maybe he could heal people and was magical and probably maybe God himself or the Son of God. Who knows? But I'm sure he did things and he was a cool guy and all of these other things. Um, and I also thought that I was empowered by God to heal people.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So,
A neat trick
and
when you can get it.
it is, but not like physical wounds, but like emotional wounds. And the reason was because I was a good listener. Is what I learned is like it turns out that if you engage in active listening, which is a skill, and it was just one that I was good at, and then you listen and digest and try to talk to people, they feel better. And I would think about it and I'd say, how am I knowing what to say to these people? And there's just a voice in my head that's saying it. I was like, that's got to be God. And a lot of people, we all have a fucking voice in our head that's called you. That is your own inner, monologue. But people who, are religious, like, maybe it's God. And that was me. And it was funny because I was doing the exact same thing too, where I was both sort of humble and like, it's like none of this you can credit me with, man. It's all God. God just tells me what to say, and I do it, and it works, and it's great. And so you can't credit me with anything except exactly. And so you can't credit me with being anything but the divine instrument of God, the humble divine instrument of God.
Yes, that's all.
And one day, someone I knew, a good friend of mine, came up to me, and she knew that I had gotten a reputation as a healer in the high school. Nobody knew what to think of it. It was almost a cult of personality thing. It was a little weird for me. It was just like completely natural. It's like, well, why wouldn't everybody like me? But she came up to me and said, "Okay, you can heal people emotionally and spiritually, right?" I said, "Yeah, I can. If you want to talk anytime, just talk to me." She goes, "My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. What can you tell me that's going to help me with that?" And the voice said, "Warning, warning. Okay, this is out of your league. This requires like a professional. This requires do not talk to her. Just pull off." And then I was just like, "No, that's doubt. That's doubt. Do not doubt. Never doubt.
Oh no.
God will give me the power to talk to her and heal her." And everything I said made things worse. Everything I said made things worse. And by the time we were done, she wanted to murder me. She wanted to murder the people sitting next to us. She wanted to murder, and she left. And that kind of voice in my head, just very satisfied, was just like, in 10 years, she's going to think this was the greatest conversation of her life. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's an unfalsifiable claim.
Or a
Know who
prophecy.
she isn't. So at that point, I started saying, okay, look, I have an ethical duty if I'm hurting people to think about what I'm doing and what I'm saying, and is all of this real? Is God real, or have I just made this shit up myself? And then I started doing that thinking that you're conditioned to do, which is like, oh, there it is, doubt. It only fails when you doubt. As long as you have faith, everything will work fine. And I was just like, okay, that's no longer acceptable because I think I caused some serious harm to this person, and that's my fault entirely. And the voice was, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Just give it time." I was like, "I don't know that I didn't." So I did a couple things. First of all, I journal pretty quote religiously. So I said, let me go back through my journal and see the other healings I had done. And I looked back, and some of it was, I will tell you, I'm going to brag, remarkable. I was just like, wow, I did a good job on that one. But about half of them weren't near. It was like, wait a minute, no, you botched that, and then there's this post hoc rationalization that it's really their fault that it didn't work. It's just like, wait a minute. And I'm reading writings from like 3 years back, and I'm seeing the events that I experienced in a brand new light. And so I had a major crisis of faith, and I begged God to show himself. And the reason God was so important to me was because I loved my father. My father really saved my life in a couple of ways, which you'd expect a father to do. So at least he was a good father, but he was there for me in ways that really needed him. And I was like, and I always knew I wanted to have kids. And I was just like, I'm going to want to see those kids again. And I'm going to want to see my father after I die. Do not take that away from me. If you take God, that's gone too. And the more I looked around, the more I realized I was fooling myself this entire time. I wanted it to be true, so I was making it true. And I remember the last day I had any faith at all. I was going over this hill on Route 9 in Massachusetts, and it's a very famous hill. Actually, it's a very famous road, and there's a reason. Going over it, and it's dusk. And I say, you know what? This is it. This is the last time I'm going to ask for a sign. And God, if you do not give me a sign today, right now, I'm not going to believe anymore.
Putting God on a deadline.
And a huge cross lit up in the sky. And I first I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, it really is the Jesus Christ God. I was like, holy shit. I was just kind of like, I was like a sign of God, but I was like the cross. I was like, oh no, it really is the biblical Jesus. I was like, holy shit. And so I became a born again Christian. And I don't know how long I was a born again Christian. I didn't have an egg timer on me. But It wasn't very long, half a second, 2 seconds tops, before I laughed my ass off, and the reason why was I knew exactly where I was on Route 9. I had gone through that road on Route 9 1,000 times. I guarantee you, 1,000 times. The reason is the university I went to was on one side, my parents lived on the other, and my girlfriend was on the other. And she and I had been dating for 5 years. So weekends, every day, back and forth, I'd be on that road 3 or 4 times a day for years. And there had been a church on top of a hill, and they had there was no construction allowed on this hill. So you'd have buildings and everything else, but no construction on this hill. So at night, the hill, you can't see it. And this nunnery built this cross up there and put that cross up there. And I had seen it 1,000 times. And most of the time, you can't see it. It's invisible during the day. You can only see it at night. I knew it was there because I'd been through it at night. But what struck me was every time I'd been down that stretch of road, every single time, I asked God for a sign. Every single time I said, if I don't get that sign, this is the last time, God. Probably 1,000 fucking times. There was only one difference between this time and all the others. This was the first time I was coming down at dusk. It was on a photosensitive timer that turned it on at dusk. So I happened to say that at the exact moment it turned on, which if you go down that road enough will happen. And then I'm sitting there going, I just believed in God because of a fucking photocell. Or maybe some nun actually went up there and flipped the switch. I think it was a timer or something. I don't know. I'm saying it's got nothing to do with me. And that thing turns on every single day at dusk. And there's probably 100 people who see it. And every one of them, if they've been down that road, have been conditioned just like me, because that's what symbols do. That's why they have it. That's why they put the cross there, was to get you thinking about God every time you hit that stretch of road. And it worked. I'm like, I swear to God, you ring a bell, I'm going to eat a biscuit. It's that fucking bad. And I laughed my ass off, and my belief was utterly dead after that point. I was just like, I literally tricked myself for a second in truly believing when that cross went up. And then I was like, I've always known that cross is there. It didn't light up for me. It lit up because it's dusk. That's it. That was the end.
So it's
And
sort of
I
like
miss
an
it every day.
anti-come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I miss it every day. I get into arguments. Christopher Hitchens is one of my favorite people. I get into arguments. I truly, and I have said, I think Christopher Hitchens had a little bit of a lack of imagination. Like, oh my God, people get offended. I'm going to listen. I'm not saying he had a lack of writing skills. I'm not saying he was stupid. I think he lacked imagination. If you can't imagine why somebody might miss their faith. And he was famous for that, going out saying, I can't imagine people who say it's like a missing limb and, the phantom pain of a missing faith. Either he's just being rhetorical or, he's lacking imagination. I mean, if you lose the possibility of being able to see your kids again, lose the possibility, people say, well, it's death that gives it meaning, only because we are limited to this life. If we weren't, then it wouldn't be. So I miss it. I miss it every day. I also still think organized religion and theism in the classical sense, in the classical definition, is must be all moral agents must oppose it. Period. End of discussion.
I tend to agree. Reasons probably vary because, people all have different reasoning and motivation and can still arrive at the same conclusions. But it's a difficult situation to see that, it actually did make you feel better, even if it led you to do what you eventually realized was harm. But then, I don't know, like, I'm trying to empathize with Hitchens' position, because, I wasn't raised particularly religious. My grandmother tried, but it didn't stick. My parents had pagan-ish leanings, and so I had this, a similar magical thinking when I was young that I could control the wind and things like that, but only if I didn't doubt it. If you
Well,
doubted it,
that's
then it's your fault why it didn't work, you know?
yep.
Um, but from Hitchens' perspective, thinking about it as a missing limb, it's sort of like, yeah, but once you realize that you never actually had that limb, can you really miss a limb you never had?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, what I would like to point out is did you notice that my story, I did tell it in under a minute, just like I said.
Hmm.
Yep. So perfect. Good. I'm glad we're on this. We are so like this is going perfect. I love this.
That's
Um,
right.
well, no, it's a limb you had. That limb was the faith. And that faith is now gone because you realized what you had faith in was not true. That doesn't mean the faith wasn't there.
Hmm.
And that faith is real, and that faith is powerful. That faith causes people to jump off of buildings thinking, that God is going to save them, or go commit murder because they think God in Leviticus that this is a good idea. That faith is very real, and the loss of it. Um, I had one of my first successful deconversions, and then I shouldn't say that because I don't think any one person has ever had a successful deconversion. It doesn't work that way, but nor should people be keeping track, in my view. But it was the first conversation where I had someone who really clearly believed at the start and by the end didn't, and it wasn't a single conversation. It was months of conversations.
Never is.
Yeah. Well, and what I realized is even if you're the one where the guy finally says, I think I don't believe anymore, you're not the one who did it. You're the final straw on the camel's back. But so rare is the person who just like, your argument just completely turned me around in 5 minutes. So it's always, it's the collective group of people trying to fight for reason. But I was talking to this guy, and he said, you and I have to stop talking now. And I was just like, "Why?" We've had a reasonable talk. We've been open minded and conscientious of each other. I said, "My wife left me 12 years ago. She took the kids. I don't get to see them.
Mm.
I live in a trailer. It's not even registered. I know the guy, so I pay him a little money, but I've got some disability income that comes in. The female species has written me off completely. I ignored the fact that there is no female species. Gives you an idea of what I was working with, though.
Hmm.
Um, and he said, and the only reason I don't kill myself most mornings is because it's a sin. And you're starting to undo that. So that's when I realized, and I used to sort of I certainly did and continued even after that to go on Twitter and engage in anti-theistic comments. But that's sort of when I realized, okay, we're playing with live ammunition.
Mm.
This is not a joke. These are people's lives. And for some people, their faith is what's keeping them alive. And while I believe fighting theism, and again, I'm going to say classical theism, so a shorthand for that is organized religion.
Hmm.
While I believe fighting that is a moral necessity for all moral agents. And this includes, by the way, deists. A lot of atheists are like, well, I fight anyone who has an irrational belief. So if you believe in, or if you're a pagan, if you're a heathen, if you believe in Odin, it's like, yeah, no, I've got no problem with you believing in Odin. And it's a misconception. Neither does Christopher Hitchens, by the way. Christopher Hitchens made himself crystal clear on that matter. He had no objection to people who believed in a higher power. He had no objection to people who believed that that higher power knew them by name and spoke to them. He did have an objection to people who felt that that higher power um, empowered them to tell other people how to live their lives. That is where it must end. That is where all moral agents must oppose it. If you can defend it rationally, then a moral agent must support it. But since I have yet to see anyone rationally defend the existence of God, you have to oppose it. Now, if you can rationally, anything you can rationally defend, a moral agent must support. And anything you can't defend, it's that simple. So, but this guy, if there's a, if there's a, I've seen people on Twitter. There was he had been a friend of mine for a while, and he was on his third round of going back to the hospital for chemo. He was not expected to survive the first round. When he was told the cancer was back for the second time, he was told, "You probably shouldn't even do the chemo." He said, "I'm going to do the chemo." Like, it's not going to work. He said, "I'm going to do the chemo." He did the chemo. They got rid of the cancer again. 2 years later, it's back. And I said, "So what got you through?" He said, "Hope and faith." I'm like, "Okay, good, good, good for you." He's not telling me to have it. He's not forcing it on me. And if
Mhm.
that's what, and then 20 atheists descend on him, or anti-theists, I should say. They're like, "Hope and faith, that's irrational. You should." I was like, "You're attacking a guy who was going for his third, should have died on his second. I've known this guy for 5 years. He's a genuinely good human being. And you're attacking him on this principle of, we need to stop people from doing irrational harm to others. Have you looked in the mirror recently? Because you're attacking a defenseless person for his personal beliefs that he is not imposing on you. And you're demanding that he believe what you believe. You just became what you beheld."
Yeah, it's the same problem. It's the I'm right, and you need to do as I say because I'm right.
Yep. I fight more with anti-theists on Twitter. It's just and then the theists are like, "Oh, brother, thank God you're with us." I was like, "Yep, no, it's not buddy. Sorry." It's like, these people are making me look bad. That's all.
It's the optics, folks. It's the optics. Oh,
So, and that's,
goodness.
yeah, and I realized too, I have to forgive myself my mistakes. It's hard to forgive, you know. I was in college, or just about to go. I was like senior year in high school when that woman, and I really believed I was talking to God, and it was good. So, you forgive yourself your mistakes. You forgive yourself, and you just realize it's the Kennedy speech. We all share the same air, same water, and we are all mortal. We have the same desires for our children. We want our children to do better than we did. So if we all have that in common, we're gonna kind of have to find a way to work together, even when we disagree, or else it's just hell for everybody. So I will engage even people, quote, on my side, if they are making life harder for no good reason to people who don't deserve it.
I agree. Compassion matters so much more than being philosophically justified in a rational, warranted epistemology, etc., etc.
Well, it depends on your Venn diagram, but yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, inside joke.
Okay.
At least two people in the live chat will get that, and hopefully no more than two. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's a very targeted audience.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I guess I'm feeling feisty today.
That's all good. We like feistiness around these parts.
Well, I'll tell you another one. Unless I'm talking too much, because now I realize I'm like dominating the fucking conversation.
No, I invite people on to sit there and listen to me talk.
Well, that's what I do. I assume that's what
Okay,
everyone
fair
else
enough.
does. I was just like, "Hi, welcome to In Time." In case you didn't realize, this is the Nick Soutter show. It's called In Time, so people think that I'm going to allow other people. If I called it the Nick Soutter show, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm here to showcase him." It's like, yeah, so it's just that's why we name it that way.
Yeah.
Somebody had
Oh,
asked. Oh, yeah. I'll remember.
just throwing in, Mark
Oh,
just throws in, we missed your feistiness, and we did. It's really good to have you back.
Thank you very much. It is. I cannot express how good it is to be back. So thank you very much for that. I really thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. I've missed you too, Mark. So uh, Stephen Hawking was asked what would happen if aliens came to this planet, and he said, "Well, it wouldn't be very good for us. They'd probably kill us all and harvest our organs and do all these other things." And he used as an example as to why he believed that is what happens when um, any not invader, but any non-native group of humans has encountered a native group of humans. It has never gone well for the native group of humans. It just hasn't. It's pretty much historically from A to now the way it is. Well, I agree with him on his interpretation of history. I disagree with what he said there, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you disagree with Stephen Hawking?" I was like, "Listen, I'm not disagreeing with him on physics. Okay, I'm disagreeing with him on an area that's actually outside of his field, which is why what's going to happen when aliens. That's not. He's not an expert in that. Here's the thing I've noticed. Unfortunately for us, Mother Nature seems to be constructed in such a, and I use the word constructed because we don't have a better word in the English language for it. There was no constructor. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I get triggered.
Every building needs a builder.
Oh God. If you see a watch, you know it's been made, right? Yes, a human being made the watch, but the human being didn't fabricate the gears out of nothing. The materials were all there. They didn't make the watch, they assembled it. There's a very big difference between assembling and creating. At any rate, again, trigger.
Fair.
So here's the thing. Mother Nature seems to be constructed in such a way that there's a certain level of randomness to it no matter what. Good people will be killed. Bad people will get away with horrific things and live happy lives. It just happens. There is an element of luck to it. But we do have some control over it, and we can exercise this control. And the people who seem to get more control are selected for based on various natural selection or natural what do you call the actual selector, whatever is doing the selecting for whatever is needed at the time. So if it's 2,000 years ago, people who were stronger, who could go a little less without food, and who could hunt, gather, and or figure out how to do farming, nature selected for them more than something else, and the rest would die. So that's pretty fucking harsh. That's what Hobbes said was the state of nature: short, nasty, brutish, and or nasty, cold, nasty, brutish, and short. Now we've overcome that. How? Compassion. We've overcome that by being able to have a social contract and to empathize with the suffering of others and thereby work together, even if it's just enlightened self-interest, where you say, if I'm with people who I know aren't going to steal, I can sleep better at night. If I'm with people who I know will guard me while I sleep, then I can guard them while they sleep. And nature selected for people who could think like that and who could actually, it's not that they selected for it, it's the people who couldn't were kicked out of tribes, and their genes would fall out of the gene pool over time. So here we are at a crossroads. We have the ability to wipe out all life on this planet. We have the ability to wipe out all life on this planet, and almost did once. More than once, really, but the one that everybody knows about is the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was our ability to overcome what, again, Hitchens would say, the adrenal glands, which are, for the human being, just a little too big, and the prefrontal lobes just a little too small. If the prefrontal lobes were just a little larger, we'd get along even better and would be able to cooperate even better. If we're going to we're working on it. If we're going to survive the nuclear age, it's only going to be because we learn to care about each other more than we hate each other. If we hate each other more, somebody's going to pull the trigger, nuke, wipe everybody out. So my argument is this. Any species that could survive the nuclear age has to have enough compassion that they wouldn't actually do it. They would have to have enough understanding of the value of life, even for animals, dogs, cats, that which is, quote, beneath us. So that if they were able to get to the point where they could build a technology capable of transporting them all the way here, they're going to have to understand the importance of working with and utilizing everything around them. valuing everything around them, such that I don't think they would cause us any harm whatsoever. I think they would actually value us and probably actually just leave us alone and watch us. It's the basis of the Star Trek, what is it? The first
Prime Directive.
Prime Directive.
Mhm.
I actually think that any species that could attain travel, that's exactly what you have to do, because you're going to have to let nature work, because if it didn't, they wouldn't have gotten space travel in the first place. And another excellent, in just 1 minute, I managed to tell a very complicated, yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I always thought that was a little pessimistic. It's a anthropomorphing the aliens. Like, it's
Yes.
projecting ourselves onto them. Like, this is what we did, so that's what they'll do. Because humans are the best, most evolved thing ever, of course. It's unquestionable.
Well, and it's a sample size of one, right? You're saying,
Yeah.
well, humans have done, so you've hit the sample size of one. Now, you could make the same argument about what I'm saying, except what I'm saying is a sample size of every natural being. The ones that can work together in one way or another survive better. And it's starting to appear to me that the ones that can also express compassion downstream, if we don't express compassion for organisms in the ocean, we may wipe them all out and eliminate our food source, and we're dead. So it stands for me to reason that compassion really towards all living organisms is a necessity to reach past a certain stage of evolution, and we are on the cusp of that stage, and that is the stage where you actually really do have the ability to wipe out all life on this planet, which we do. We will either compassionately work together and overcome these problems, or we will get wiped out. There is no middle ground. Aren't you glad you had me on? A nice Sunday
you're
chat.
such a delight.
Super chat, $10 super chat to not hear Nick ever be so depressing ever again. I'm sorry.
You scared me. It made me think I missed one. I actually did set one aside because you were in the middle of a story, but Mad Computer Scientist, aka Sinister Porpoise, sends $2. Thank you so much, and says, for silk opera gloves. I've considered getting some gloves. I don't know. I think some looks would work with it, but I'm not sure how it would affect my ability to like push buttons and things. Because like, I mean, I don't do it as often as I used to, but I do, have my buttons, and sometimes I can even turn them off.
For me, it's turning them on that's usually the issue, except when I got the hot mic after a show's going down, the music's up, the credits are up, I'm talking to the guests, and it's just like, let's talk about that show, and let's talk about, oh God, I saw Titan modding in this. Titan, your mod? Yeah, Titan, Titan's the mod. I was like, then I just get a DM from Titan. Yes, I'm your mod, and I can still hear you. It's like, whoa, hot mic. Hold on a sec. The credits are rolling, and somehow everyone can. But so for Sinister Porpoise, I love the cigarette holder and of course the harmonica of disappointment. So, but what I was thinking was, if you got silk gloves for the right hand, if you could do the buttons with the left, because the flag is covering the your left, assuming you're not inverted there. Yeah. So then it could look like you've got gloves on two hands. I don't.
I think
like
I
the glove
am inverted.
idea.
Details.
I do like the glove idea. I think, but I understand that. I mean, if you're producing your own show, you're going to have limitations.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses to everything.
I mean, everybody knows. Well, I mean, okay. So, I mean, I wear this on every stream, and this is the $400 suit. But what I don't tell people is that I only paid $200 for it, and I could explain to you why. I'm not going to. What I will say is the limitation is I can't stand up during the stream.
So half off?
Half off.
Yes.
but there's consequences. Is it's just like I got to remember the camera, and it's like every now and then there have been incidents, especially like behind the scenes on In Time, right before we start, where it's like I get up and I realize the guests are already there, and the guests are like, well, we really didn't need to see that, and I'm just like, I apologize. I know I said this earlier. I've got my OnlyFans site. And that's just basically where I start naked and people pay me to put clothes back on, and it's very effective.
That's a business model, yeah.
It is. It is. if you've seen me naked, it's a business. It works. I get paid quick.
But for all that you've got me light years ahead on graphics and production value and stuff, I do have a handy button for when I need to stand up, and that's to just turn my camera off. It's
You
a
can
neat
do that.
trick. You could, well, you've got your doors. You can just shut your door and
Yeah, we've got the screens, the
yeah.
shields. Well, and the funny thing is, I've the running gag, of course, is that I hit the wrong one. I know which one's what, but I say, "Oh, I'm going to mute you." Boom, when I hit the thing. Those were originally supposed to be set up to the audio for each person, but since we've changed how people connect so often, and every time we do that, I got to reset up the audio on those screens. I've never done it again. So when the screens come down, the person's not muted anymore. It doesn't actually do it, just shuts off the camera. So sometimes I'll pretend to like shut my own screen and pretend I'm muted. So I'll be like, well, I'm doing it. And then people can see that just as the screen. No, I'm not mute. The thing is it's all smoke and mirrors. And that's basically the whole show. It's like that's just a facade. If you go to
It's
the
a
back
flim
end, it's like
flam.
everybody's just like, is this going to work today, Nick? I was like, fuck if I know. Why are you asking me? I'm going to hit the button. We'll see what happens. And I'm sure you probably don't have this problem because you're using StreamYards, but it's always interesting when you're using OBS or especially in the earlier days, maybe 5 years ago, you use OBS, vMix, any of those software. You hit connect, you start the show, and you're interviewing the person, and your head mod contacts you and says, "When are you going to start the show?"
Oh,
And you're like, "We started 10 minutes ago." No, you didn't. And you check, and you are connected to YouTube. Your stream is going somewhere. You just have no idea. You've got no clue where it's going. And I have only once, I did find out where it was going, and it was to somebody else who had actually done a show with us at one point. They wanted a co-stream, so I had used their key. Their key was still on my OBS. And so we were streaming to their channel. They had no idea. So just like my show's on their channel. I was like, what are we? They're like, yeah, Nick, I'm never giving you a stream key again. I was like, I never suggested you did it in the first place. It's just that's a bad idea. Well, it's a little scary because it's like you're streaming somewhere. You just don't know where.
Out into maybe it's to the aliens, convincing them not to.
Well, I'm sitting there going like, is Kim Jong-un going? What the fuck who's this guy? I mean, I've got no idea.
My first few shows, I actually did do straight through OBS, and I never accidentally streamed to somebody else's channel, but I have tried to start a stream and forgot to change the stream key for the new stream, and so it was like, no, that stream's already, it's done, it's in the history books, you can't go live. And I'm like, but why though? Because it doesn't tell you what the error
I know.
is.
Well, and YouTube, frankly, should not allow you to connect so what happens now, I think, is, well, I don't know. You can still connect, and it'll say you are connected to YouTube and you are streaming, even if, at least last time it was probably maybe 2 years ago, I was running OBS and I connected, and it was how was it I connected? It said I was connected. It said I was streaming on my end. This was with vMix on auto connect to YouTube. But what ended up happening was it wasn't showing up on my channel. So it's sort of like, it looks like it was just getting swallowed. YouTube was just not sending the signal anywhere. But it's like, well, if you're not actually connected to anything, it shouldn't tell you you're connected to something. Now that's just me, but how did my camera move all the way over here?
It's getting all excited.
Yeah, yeah.
It's also feeling feisty.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, we're starting to close in on running out of time, as the case may be, because Maya's show starts at 9:30, and so I try to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, send people
Titan
over.
Titan hit me up and said he had an idea for a new show that I could host, and said, so what is it? He goes, well, let's call it Waste of Time. And I was just like, fucking son of a.
Damn it, Titan.
Yeah, no, I don't like him. I just don't. Well, no, I mean, what did he say earlier? Did he say like I was looking good? Never mind. I can't actually, because like I am so like vulnerable to compliments. I honestly just need to like. I mean, once somebody says I'm looking good, it's just sort of like you can do no wrong. It's like, you know.
Yeah, I have a complex relationship with compliments. Partly it's the whole trans thing. Like before I started, when people gave me compliments, it didn't resonate with me. Like I did a talk for RFRX, and one of the bits was things that might surprise you changing during a transition is how I felt about compliments, because I described it as like wearing a wool sweater and people saying, "You are a lovely wool sweater." And I'd say, "Thanks, but I'm actually not. It's just a thing I'm wearing, you know?" It's like they're talking about you as if you're the thing you're wearing, and
That's interesting.
yeah, it just doesn't. So it made me uncomfortable, but now that I'm actually being myself, I'm not as it doesn't affect me the same way. It's a very curious experience. But I do digress. I wanted to ask you about In Time, because being a non-believer, being a philosopher, a debater, an author, all of these things, they don't entail being a video creator. So, what caused you to decide to do the thing?
Um, let's see. Yeah, it is. I have a very hard time with compliments, actually. And he'll even tell the Titans, the other one was like, "Yeah, I paid him $20." I just so yeah. And I think there's always psychological reasons for that for everybody, and I think there's probably similarities that overlap and differences for everybody. But so I had actually been working on something called the Atheist Codex, which was starting to make some money, which was really nice. And it was an educational website where people could look up, and you could be a theist or an anti-theist, and you could look up basically all the arguments, see where they came from. And I was making a large overarching argument, which is very simple. One, um, the argument from ignorance is the single most employed argument. Sorry, it's the single most failed argument in human history. So, of any argument made for anything ever, the argument from ignorance is the most employed and the most failed. And it's the argument from ignorance in defense of God. Two, every argument for the defense of God is, in fact, if you do a reducto on it, only an argument from ignorance. Therefore,
Checks out.
every argument, yeah, that and that's sort of worked on that and did that. So, um, and I had a mentor who had said, "Hey, do you want to?" I'd gotten on a show to talk about prisons because I had written the biography of a prison psychiatrist who worked at a maximum security prison, and you can only imagine what, as a psychiatrist, the stories that he had. That was I still struggle with what I learned and had to see just to write that book. But I was invited on to talk about prison reform to a show, and then I said, "Well, you're into philosophy, right? Well, let's do a show. Let's call it Ask a Philosopher, and you can come on." I said, "Great, I come on." And I was like, "Who's the philosopher?" And they're like, "Oh, that's you." I was like, "That's who now?" I thought we were going to ask a philosopher questions. He said, "No, no, no. The audience gets to ask you the questions." No, bad idea, bad idea. This was my second time on YouTube. When someone told me that you could go live on YouTube, I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that there was something called that there were chats even. I was like, people will be watching and talking. Yeah. And I said, "I really don't want to do that." I go, "Yeah, you do." I said, "No, I'm not good at this." He goes, "Actually, you are." I said, "I have no talent for this." "Yes, you actually do. You just don't know it yet." And so I started out with that show. I was doing that show for about a year, and I did love it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I said, "Why don't I do my own interview show?" But I didn't want to make it about me, and I did want to make it about current events. So we called it In Time. and it went from this interview show, and I was like, oh my god, getting guests all the time is going to be hard. I was like, why don't we also cover news and maybe just do current events with the guests, and it was a variety show at first, and then it just niched down into a news show, and it got to be something that all the people who volunteer on In Time and do so much work got so good at. I was like, I think we accidentally became a professional news program.
Whoops.
Yeah, and I could not be prouder of it. The number of times that we've beaten, we, we there was and the way we do it is people research on social media and find the stuff on social media before even the AP, Reuters, Fox, CNN, ABC pick, before any of them get it. We vet it, and if we're sure it's true, we go with it. And so far, I think we only ever no, I don't think we ran with one that wasn't true. We came close more than once, but and then we're doing these things live before anyone else, and breaking them down, and then I think what I like about it most is it takes so many of my skills. Now, because I'm producing, it's like the fact that I know how to program helps. I'd rather have a producer, but at any rate, um, a knowledge of history helps, because we try to put the news in context. So all of a sudden, it's like, hey, I actually do know history. Philosophy helps. Being able to listen, being able to talk, being able to argue when I have to with someone helps. So it's all of a sudden, it's like, this is using 90% of my skill set here, and that felt great. It felt great to not. I love writing, and I love creating worlds. I love being able to use the imagination. And the Water Thief was a dystopian novel, and just building an entire world out of nothing. I loved, but that uses a much smaller skill set. On In Time, I don't get necessarily that creative rush, although I get to do the graphics. I did the intro. So I do get to do it. It uses everything. So it's like, who could ask for more?
That's fair. I definitely relate to that. I've had some jobs like my current job. It's great for a number of reasons, but it really only uses a couple of my skills, so it's not super fulfilling. I have had jobs in the past, like I was a professional photographer. That I got to do artistic stuff, creative stuff, business running stuff, communication with people, directing, theater, presentation, even a little bit of fashion and make. Even though I was not into it at the time, it was still a thing I was interested in. Um, so yeah, I get it. When a thing is fulfilling, it's a thing you love to do.
Well, and the only thing that's ever come close was when I was working on the Obama campaign. And that was another one where, like, somebody would say, oh, well, the Democrats started the KKK. Yes, they did. But at the time, they were conservative. It's like, okay, it's because I know history. And then it's like, oh, they need phone banking in Arizona, because I'm in Connecticut. And once it was clear Obama was going to win Connecticut, well, it wasn't clear until after he won. They're like, we need a whole. Arizona is still up for grabs, but they don't have enough Spanish speaking phone bankers. I was like, I speak Spanish. I'll phone bank from Connecticut in Nevada. And I set up, and then any Spanish speaking volunteers who spoke no English, we sent them to the virtual phone bank for Nevada so that we could beat. And so that's another example of just like, it doesn't, on In Time, the fact that I can read Russian has come in handy more than once now for obvious reasons.
I imagine.
Yeah. And so it's like at any time, somebody's going to come up and, say, so the Venetian blind theorem in geometry. And I'll be like, holy shit, I learned that in 7th grade. And now here we go. But that's what I like about it is I'm always being challenged to bring as much of my skill to bear, if I'm going to do as good a job as I like it to be. And as much as I think, I am blessed to have so many people who volunteer on this show. And the other thing is, if I'm going to expect them to do the job that they do, which is absolutely fucking amazing. If you go to our Discord and you see how many times we've been ahead of every major news source on huge international stories, and you see
I
there it is,
remember a
and like,
couple.
yeah. it's sort of like, okay, so my job is to make sure that I'm there when they've got it, and that it's vetted properly, that I don't make anyone look stupid. Because that'll happen if I pick up the wrong story. It's almost happened more than once, and to make that work mean something. So it's also a genuine privilege to be able to work with the people who are volunteering for us.
Hell yeah, having a fantastic team. Another random thing I do is I run a Comic Con up here in
Mhm.
northern New York, and the team is crucial. Like there's things that you literally cannot do by yourself, and when the people are they care, they want to do good work, it's tremendous, for lack of a better term. I hate that previous president, how many words he's contaminated and tainted. Um,
Yeah.
but it's true. They're we've got a person who her entire job is to chase around the celebrities and wrangle them and make sure the ones who need to be on the main stage at 1 o'clock are there at 12:55, and the ones who need to be in the panel room at 3 are putting their pants on or wiping off the ketchup from their face or whatever at 2:45, things like that. And she kind of lives for it. She's got a little bit of a dommy mommy thing going on and telling famous people what to do. And weirdly, famous people seem kind of trained to accept that sort of treatment.
Yeah, they're used to being handled. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I'm like that's it's a trip. Oh, but yeah,
Oh, and you learn something that.
without her, I couldn't do it. I couldn't wrangle the celebrities
Oh,
and
yeah.
run the stage and run the cameras and run the ticket booth. It just, you can't do that.
No, no, you can't. And that's the other thing too, which I would imagine you would concur with me on this, which is the fact that you learn so much. You've got the ability to come out, talk to somebody new who's going to say something, and you know, or just watching people argue over like, okay, here's a bill coming up. What's the Supreme Court going to do about it? Well, we got to sit down and dive into what are the precedents. What have they thought about things like this before? And then you learn all this shit, and then you realize, oh my God, nobody on the Supreme Court knows what the fuck they're doing. Um, Although, admittedly, most people can figure that out just by looking at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but they don't look though, and that's what makes
They
it
don't.
rough.
That's true. That's if they did, I wouldn't have a show.
Well, but who has the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all a the my one of my favorite Hitchens quotes. All of life is a wager, but there is everything costs something. Time is the one that it's like playing video games costs time, but if you don't play video games, sometimes it costs your mental health when you want to just take someone and just fucking ram them right through it. Oh, sorry. Sorry, that's just
In
I'll
Minecraft.
have to get my pills. Hold on. But at any rate, you have to decide what you're gonna spend that time on, and what's the most value of that time. And I love learning, and so when I get to do the show, and somebody says, "Here's something you haven't thought of," um, the one you just I'd already. I mean, I'm gonna be thinking about what you said about the difference between I like your wool sweater and um, I like the wool sweater that you're wearing, and you are that wool sweater that I like. The difference between, I think, if I'm going to try to frame it in a slightly differently, I like the facade that you've got on. That's a pretty facade versus you've done a good job with it, I suppose, as opposed to the real you. That doesn't seem to me to do it justice, but
It's
it's
in the
something.
ballpark. And
It's
actually, I got a
something
dose of that
I'm going to think
shortly
about.
after.
Yep,
I had
yep.
somebody came into the chat and said something like, I used to think you were hot, but now you look like a girl, so I'm out. And I'm like, thank you. But that's exactly it. It's like, it's not who you are, it's what you look like. And that's how the compliments affected me. Is it's like, it's not who I am, it's just what I look like. And that's not really valuing a person, you know?
Yep. Well, I like that analogy, so I learned that, and then the other one, which is I can't get wrong, and I got to figure out how and why I thought this was that law. I was arguing with someone from the UK who basically said in all 50 states it's perfectly legal to just kill a trans person and get away with it. I was like, okay, that's patently false. Now, I don't want to sit here and say that there aren't people who absolutely get away with it, and it's a huge fucking problem, especially in some states, and they're basically legislating it into being legal. But you have to be accurate, or else people are going to, say you're lying, and these are problems that can't be solved if people can accuse you successfully of lying either way. Um, so I had looked at it, and I had thought that a bill had passed at some point that took care of it all, but it appears not to have. So I was dead wrong, and I think it was Purple just corrected me. I think Purple's right. So I'm just like, now I got to research that and figure that out, because I don't want to get that wrong again. So it's always learning something. It's always making mistakes and learning new things.
Yeah, that's the bitch of it is, when you're dealing, especially with the emotionally irrational crowd, you have to know everything about everything. And if you don't know even one thing, they just assert their preferred preconception. Oh, you can't explain abiogenesis, therefore God.
Yeah,
It's done. It's over.
And that gets to my I think if you do a reducto on absolutely pick any one of St. Thomas Aquinas, the Quince Vitae, the whole any argument for God, the Kalam, whatever you want, which is basically St. Thomas Aquinas, but all a reducto to it will eventually stop at a argument from ignorance. And I don't think anyone has come up with I think I had someone who got cute about it and came up with
We found the
a
end of the
priori.
infinite regress.
Yeah, exactly. We Agrippa's trilemma solved. Um, I know you have to go. It's been a delight. I really appreciate you in inviting me on and taking the time. So
Oh yeah,
thank you
I
so much.
appreciate you coming, and kind of like it's slightly late, but sort of a welcome back kind of thing, because I really did mean what I said before you showed up here, when people were allowed to say nice things. When the world is gone to shit and everything's fucking crazy, hearing you explain it makes me feel better.
That's probably one of the best compliments I've gotten in a very, very long time. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Now that I've made you feel uncomfortable with a compliment.
You actually haven't. I don't know why you haven't. I usually do feel uncomfortable. That one just I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think
do
you
good
haven't,
work.
because that's the goal. So if somebody feels that way, then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're doing it right. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Maya is live. So before we wrap, people have shared the link. It's in time official, in time independent news, all of those things. But what do you have, like, anything planned coming up?
We do have some plans. So, we're using new hardware, the same software, but I have a new computer, and it turns out they don't like each other. So it's like getting the Stitch, the Nick of Time, the Stitch in Time, all the other show interfaces running has been a nightmare. And I'm the kind of guy who's just like, I got to get it all done 3 hours ago. And we've decided we're going to pace ourselves. I've decided I'm going to pace myself. Right now, we're still doing the downtime with Lance, which people seem to really like, and we're going to be doing breaking news. We are going to return to our weekly rundowns and just say, okay, this is what happened last week. So you go into your Monday knowing what happened last week. And if somebody asks you at the water cooler about X, Y, and Z, you can say, no, it's really this. So we are the last two interviews we were supposed to have was with Lieutenant General Benjamin Hodges, who was the #2 guy at NATO. He was the Supreme Commander of all NATO ground forces worldwide. He was also the #2 guy in the U.S. military. He was the Supreme Commander of all U.S. forces in Europe. And we had him on once. That was a spectacular show, and he agreed to come on 2 more times. And the week we went down was the week he was going to do both of them. Once we get our feet under ourselves and we are not having mic issues and we're technically solid. Once we've done a couple of weeks of shows, we are going to be inviting him back. Starsky's going to be back very soon. We're already talking to him. Starsky's got a very important, I think, new project that I want to talk to. But we're not going to be impatient about it. We're going to sit there and make sure that there's a lot of people who haven't done what they're doing now in almost a year. So it's including me. So we're just getting used to being back, and then that's what we're going to do.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And like you said earlier, it is important to take your time and not burn yourself out immediately. Yeah,
which I
definitely.
do a lot, and so and it was actually Titan who just I was gonna say spanked me. I think I probably should not say that.
You should not say that
Um,
to Titan, no.
no, but it kind of just slapped me around a bit and said, "Chill the fuck out." He actually said something much better than that. He said, "Nick," I said, and I was telling him, I was like, "Look, we're going to do this, this, this. They're all coming back next week." He said, "Nick, be kind to your future self." That was some of the best advice I've also heard in a long time. Be kind
That's a
to
good
your
one.
future self. That is a good one. That's and I normally don't, go around repeating I repeat like 80 or 90% of the conversations I have with Titan to other people, but it really depends. Like if I'm in it's audience specific. So if I'm at an S&M club, I may say one set of things that he's told me. And if I'm, speaking at the Toastmasters, I'll say something else. But in keeping with that, the be kind to your future self. He hit the nail on the head with that one. So that's what I am trying to do.
Yeah. That's I think that's a good place to close things out.
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks once again, Nick. Thanks everybody in the chat for coming. Appreciate the hell out of you. You've been keeping things lively, and I appreciate that as well. This has been a lot of fun. And quick plug for myself. Make sure to come back next week. We'll have Mark Reed on to talk about the weather down under, or something. I don't
Ooh.
know.
Well, Mark's always got something to say too. So
It's true. It's true.
I'm gonna yeah. Well, and then me going back and getting used to it is delightful to be back in the community and to be seeing everybody again. I did follow it for a while with sock accounts, but after a while too, I was busy, and so to see everybody's been a delight. You very much so as well. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing if you've made it this far. Please do. It helps. And as always, remember, you don't have to pretend you have magical powers because you are better than religion. Good night.